Hello, folks. Welcome to part 3 of this tutorial in HTML. Today, we're going to be looking basically into two things, frames and graphics. First, we're looking into frames, and basically, it's just the iFrame that I'll be looking into. Other components of frames are no longer supported in HTML5, so they are now becoming obsolete, and I will not cover them, but I will use iFrame. Now, this is an HTML tutorial, but to make some of these iframes more functional, if you will, we have to use a little bit of JavaScript. So I'm going to be using the most minimal amount of JavaScript, but in my examples, I will, whenever I use JavaScript, I will explain what each one of the components does, because we use a lot of the get element by ID, which is the most common one to use in JavaScript. And I will explain how it's working in conjunction with iFrame. Of course, without JavaScript, I can still put the contents of any other document within a document, right? That's what basically iFrame does. It allows you to put the contents of one document into another document. So we'll look into that. And then the most majority of the examples that I will be looking into today are graphics. You don't need to be a programmer to do graphics in HTML, but some of the graphics that we use will require a little bit of CSS, of styles. Most commonly in HTML, people use the image or the picture, that they're the most common ones to use. And they'll put a picture of a flower, of a house, of a person. And they're very easy, you don't need to do anything, just give it the source of the file and voila, right? You have your picture on your screen. But another one that is also used a lot is the area maps, or you just call it, along with the use map. And in this, the idea is that wherever you have an image, and depending on where you click, if I click here in this example, if I click in a one of the planets, it will go to a link of that planet. So we'll look into that. But there are more complex graphics in HTML. Mainly, we have Canvas, which allows you to do, figures like squares, circles, rectangles, ellipses, whatever, do colors, and then do text, fancy text, as you can see right here. Or even more complex than that, we have vector graphics, right? Vector graphics, SVG files. It's not an SVG file. SVG is within HTML. And now the only, if you will, the drawback that I don't like about SVG is that you need a little bit of styles. You need cascading styles. But don't worry, on all of my examples, I will explain what each one of the attributes are in the elements, okay? Because you do need them. But look how powerful, look at all the different graphics that I have under SVGs. So I will go over each one of these, each little sample. It will be in this tutorial today, and I will explain all of the elements and attributes one by one. So hopefully you will enjoy this and you'll learn something. And of course, all the code is included in the video, and I'll leave it on the screen for your reference. So you can always go back and, retype it if you want to, or learn from it. Either way, I'm here for you guys. So with that said, let's go and get started. I'll be using brackets. I have a Mac that, MacBook Pro, an M1 Max laptop. I use brackets, and I will be using Safari for looking at the examples. So I may jump into another browser like Edge, maybe. I'm not sure, but most likely I'll just use Safari. So let's do it. All right, folks, so here we are. I'm sharing my screen. As you can see, I got 3 windows open. I got brackets, that's what I use in the right side of my screen. On the left side, I have 2 windows open. One is a Safari. Here it is, Safari. It says hello world. The name of the file's index. It's index file. There it is, index HTML. This is what I have right now. It's basically a title says hello world and hello world. So that's what it says. Here in the bottom, I have a text program where I got all the examples that we're going to look into today. The only reason I pre-typed them, I made them in brackets and I put them in here so I can be adding them one by one and explain what's happening. So that was easier. So first we're going to start with iFrame. And so I'm going to do is copy here and paste it over here. So there's my iFrame example. And then what I'm going to do is save it. And when I reload this page, I will have my document. So as you can see, I can resize my browser. And as I'm resizing the browser, the paragraph keeps resizing with it. So let's go over what's happening. First of all, we have the title iFrame. Here's my header 1. In my header 1 it says iFrame example. That's this right here. And then I have a paragraph, new paragraph, and here's my iFrame. And this is the format normally used. iFrame, then the source is para.html for paragraph. So there's a file in my folder named this, para.html. And I gave it an ID, which is my frame, and the width, 100%. That's why when I'm resizing this, see the frame resizes along with the browser window because I have a width of 100% and then a height of 400. So you see this line right here, no matter how I resize it, I'm always going to have that line right there. And if I go smaller than 400, you see to the right, there's this bar. So anyways, so that's how this works. If I were to change the width to a particular, set, let's say instead of 100%, let's do 300. I'm gonna save it and then reload my page. See, now it's 300, see? It's right there. So I can do the width and the height. I can do either the number of pixels, put in a number, 300, 400, 500, or I can do a percentage. If I do 75%, for example, on the width, again, I'm going to save it. Now I'm going to reload the page. No matter what the size of my browser is, you notice how it's always going to be about 75% of the width. And I can do the same for the height. So, so that's how it works. I'm going to do this 100% only because that's for my particular example, that's how it works better. I'm going to reload it. So it's back to this. So that's how the iFrame works. So basically, I'm embedding one file into another file. Oh, great. That's great. Wonderful. And obviously, I can change the name of this file and I can do that. But what if I wanted to do something more useful? So I'm going to be using a little bit of JavaScript and I'm going to do a menu. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and paste my example number 2. And before I'm going to save it, but before I reload the page, I'm going to explain what's going on. So the main program, the main file, index file is the same. I have my HTML head, here's my title. The only difference is this script right here, which I will go with right now, main window. And the other thing is different is I included a table. Now, why? So what I wanted to do here is a little bit of a menu-like, basically the document is going to have 3 buttons on the top. And we saw buttons, right, in a prior part of this tutorial. I was explaining how the forms work. But in this case, I have a table. I have a table, and then I have these buttons. See, here's the button. And when I do a button, I'm doing a little JavaScript saying an unclick, meaning when I click on each one of these buttons, do the function A, B, or C, depending on the button. And each one will say a different thing, paragraph, an essay, and APA style. So the button itself, all it's going to do is put 3 buttons. But when I click on them, they're going to do whatever these functions do. Now, the original source still paragraph HTML right there. But what happens when I click on it? It goes to my JavaScript. And here are the functions A, B, and C. As you can tell, they're different. What does the function do? It goes to do a document get element by ID of my frame. And what is my frame? Here it is. You see this ID equals my frame? That is this. In JavaScript, document get element by ID, it's very self-explanatory. Document, yes, it's document. Get the element by ID. So I'm looking at whatever the ID is, my frame, and there's my frame. And then the source, here I'm changing the source file. So when I click on a button, it goes here and it says, hey, go look for this and change this value of the SRC right here. It's going to change. Okay. So when I reload this page, here are my buttons. These three buttons are these buttons right here. And by default, it goes to paragraph right there. This is my paragraph. But now, when I click on these, if I click on SA or APA style, it goes in there. See? It changes. So that's how this works. Now, does this work with a different browser? Sure. I'm going to go into this. Here's my folders. I got all kinds of folders in here. And I'm going to do index open with Microsoft Edge. And here they are. See? Same thing. Anyways, all right, so I'm going to close this. And now that I've done this second example, that's all I got for the iFrame. They're not, there's only, you can use it by itself or using the JavaScript as I'm done here. A little simple menu. And of course, these buttons, I mean, I can add as many as I want, and then I would put in, either a fully qualified address, like http://whatever, www that, whatever, you can do the whole thing, the whole path, or I can just put in the file. If I had a different directory, I would put in the directory / the name, and so on and so forth. Nothing out of this world. So again, this is not a JavaScript tutorial. I will have one in the future, as I mentioned before. After I'm done with my HTML, I'm going to do CSS, and then after that JavaScript, and then PHP. I got my little plan going on. But until then, just know for now the document get element by ID. It looks for the ID name, and then you can tell it you change something. Okay, so let's delete this, and now the part of this tutorial that's going to take the longest is the images, because there's so many. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll start with the image. IMG is the most common way, and I have a picture named scream.png, and then the alternate text is scary face, and I have my width and my height. And so let's save it, and let's see what it looks like. And oops, reload page, and there it is. And because of the browser size, there we go. And there's my scream. See, there's a little guy with screaming. So it's very simple. This is the most common way of putting a picture on a web page. The most commonly used, and I looked at web pages and some of my students, and they always go for the image because it's so easy. They just put the source and all that. Now, could I use JavaScript and change the source? Absolutely, yes, you can. So where they click on a button, change on the image, but we're not going to do that. Again, this is not a JavaScript tutorial. So this is very simple, nothing to it, and there's the image. There's also what we know as area maps. Now, what is an area map? Let's imagine, in fact, I'm gonna, for this example, I'm going to load the web page and then explain as I'm looking at the text because of the parts that are included in it. So here it is. Here is my area. I'm gonna save it. And then over here, I'm gonna reload the page. And there it is. Now this will make more sense. Okay, so area image example. let's place the first thing I gotta do here. This is a comment. Remember, when I start with the less than an exclamation point, it's a comment. I finish it right there. We'll place an image on the screen. So here is my image. Here's IMG for my image. My source is solar. That's this graphic right here. It's called solar. I went on the internet. I downloaded a picture. I saved it, resized it, whatever, and then I went here. Now, I use Paint, but you can use any program you want. When you're using this, it takes a little bit of practice. You got to know the size of your image. And if you're resizing the image, if I was to go here and change the width and the height, it's very important that you know that when you're doing areas. And I'll go over it right now. And then I have what is called a use map. And I gave it the hashtag planets, okay, use map. That's very important too. Why? Because I'm going to use it as a map. Basically, I'm saying, look, this is a image, and depending on where my mouse is, it's going to do something. Now, that's why it's important to know the size of the image. And if this was a map of the United States or continents of the world, and depending on which continent I click, I wanted to go to a specific thing, I need to know the coordinates, the XY coordinates of all this. That's why here I have Mercury, Venus, and Earth. I need to know the coordinates of all this. And the easiest way for me was to go into my mapping program, and as I'm moving my mouse, it was telling me the XY coordinates. So I play with it a little bit before doing this right here. Now I'm doing this, it's called a map. Here it is, map. I'm giving it the ID of planets. Planets will match use map, will match planets, and then I have name planets. See, they all have the same name, planets. The only difference is here I have a hashtag right there, but you have to have that. Now that I have that, now I have an area shape, and the first one is circle. Circle with the coordinates of the, here's my X, Y, and my radius. It's just like a regular circle. And I'm telling you, hey, when you go to that coordinate and see how the mouse changes from a little arrow to a hand? That is the center of my circle, and then the radius tells me for how long this is going to be, and then it goes back to a regular one. And then here I have another one, and then I only have two, Mercury and Venus. I didn't make one for Earth because I just wanted to show the example. So in this image here, if I go to Mercury or Venus, they'll do something. What it will do? Well, here's my area, my shape, my circle. And if I click on this area, it's telling it to go to this right here, which is from NASA. It's just for my example, I just did that. So let me make this browser a little bit bigger, like this target bigger. So it shows actually right there, like that. So now you can see a little bit more organized. Basically, each planet will link to a NASA website for that particular planet. The shape is a circle, here the coordinates for each one, and then the reference that where it's supposed to go, and then the alternate, Mercury, Venus. So this, when I go over here, here's my planets, and if I click on Mercury, it's gonna go to the NASA's Mercury website. That's Mercury, believe it or not. I'm gonna go back. If I click on Venus, now it's gonna go to Venus, and I can resize. And this is NASA's website, it's right there, solar system.nasa.gov, and so on and so forth. Whatever happens here is a different story. Now, I'm gonna go back, and there's my original link. And that's how you make area maps. I could have, in here, I'm gonna do for Venus only. I do target equals blank. And I'm gonna save this. And over here, I'm gonna go and reload. And if I click on Venus, I didn't do it this time. Didn't do it. But anyways, back. Target equals blank. Oh, I think it doesn't do it on the area. I'm sorry. That it did, but it didn't. So there it is. This is how you use area shapes, which is the main purpose of this. And okay, it's time. I'm gonna make as I'm resizing my bracket screen. Of course, this moves around, but you know, now it's time to do canvas. So what is canvas? Canvas is a space. Think of this block right here being a space, and inside of that space, I can do graphics. Now, the cool thing about canvas is easy to use, and you can do shapes and things like that. One drawback of canvas is that you gotta, you know, it's a container. So you create a container, and if you want to do a different graphic, you probably have to do a different container. And if you're going to do another, you got to do a different container and so on. So that is one of the small drawbacks of canvas. But let's go ahead and do my copy paste. And here it is. So let's go over this before I, before I reload this page. Before I reload this, let's go over here. I got my canvas example. I'm gonna center the word canvas. It's gonna say canvas right here. I normally don't use canvas, so I went on the internet and I searched canvas a little bit. You know, I've used it before, but it's not one of my preferred way of doing graphics. I like SVG Graphics more. But you give it an ID, of course. Do I need an ID? No, not really. But in this case, I will, because I'm using scripts. See the script right there? Okay, so my canvas, there's canvas 1. And canvas 1, okay, so I have my width, my height, my style. See here, I'm gonna combine Java and cascading style sheets for this canvas to work. So the style that I'm using is border of 1 pixel, solid, and this is black. It uses 6 numbers, hexadecimal, RGB. You probably have heard that before, red, green, and blue. When they're all zeros, this is black. So I'm gonna put a border of 1 pixel, and it's gonna have a width of 300 by 400, and I'm gonna call it my canvas. I call it a container. Now, using JavaScript, I'm saying, hey, the variable canvas1 will be get element by ID, and we've seen this get element by ID before. It's looking for my canvas1, which is this right here, okay? And then I'm saying get context 2D, so it's gonna be a 2-dimensional space, if you will. Now, the first thing I'm gonna do is draw a rectangle. So I'm gonna fill style of, remember, red, Y, RGB, right? 2 digits in hexadecimal from 0 to 255, which is FF, 00 to FF. And they're gonna be in red. And then I'm gonna fill the rectangle from 00 to 100. So it's gonna basically make a small rectangle inside my canvas. My canvas is 300 by 400. I'm gonna do a small rectangle of 100. So I'm gonna reload, and here it is. This is the 300 by 400 rectangle. And then this small rectangle right here is red, it's right here. See? I'm using JavaScript to do this inside of the canvas. The canvas is the space. And then in that canvas, I'm using the style to define a little bit of, you know, of the canvas. Obviously, the width and height, all these things will stay with it, but the style, I have to use CSS. So I'm not going to get too complex on these CSS and Javas that I'm going to be using, but just know this: border, 1 pixel, solid, black. And here, when I'm doing the JavaScript, I'm saying, look, fill this style is going to be 0 to 100, and it's going to be in red. And I put the comment there, red. Now, one thing you've noticed is this right here. It says red. This is a comment. When you are in JavaScript, between this and this right here, comments are defined with the slash and the asterisk right there, the backslash and the asterisk. Everything in between those two will be a comment, unlike this comment, which is an HTML comment. And you know, when I get to the CSS tutorial, there are comments different in CSS. There are comments in JavaScript. There's comments in PHP. Every one of these little languages has a different way of defining how to do a comment, you know. So anyways, that is there. Now, what if I want to draw a line? All right, so again, I'm gonna go here, and this script here, I'm gonna move it just so it's there. So now I'm gonna draw a line. So now C is this, okay? C is my canvas 1 context 2D, okay? I'm saying move to 150, 150. So it's gonna move somewhere here. It's not gonna do anything. I'm just telling, you know, my system, hey, go somewhere in there. And then you're gonna do a line from there to 200, 200. And I'm gonna do the stroke. Stroke is actually the one that is gonna draw the line. So I'm gonna save it, and I'm gonna go and reload, and there's my line from 150, 150 to 200, 200. Pretty easy. So this is how you draw a rectangle. This is how you draw a line. What if I want to draw a circle? Well, let's do that. And there's my circle. So to do a circle, you go to begin path. Everything is with the letter C here, you see, because C, the variable C in my script, is my context in 2D. I'm still working with the same canvas. So begin path, I'm gonna do an arc from 0 from X from 100 comma 200, and then I'm gonna do this. This formula here, math.pi. I'm not gonna get too complex, but basically this obviously is the value of pi. Then when you multiply times 2, that's 360 degrees. If you go into math, you know that pi is 180 degrees. So times 2 is 360. So I'm saying, hey, go to here to here. I'm gonna go to this radius and go from 0 to 360. This is gonna do a circle, guys. So I'm gonna save it, and then I'm gonna go to my Safari and reload. And there is my circle at 100, 200. So this line right here went from 150 to 200. So this here is the center of my radius, right? And 100 is, remember the circle, the rectangle went all the way to 100. This is the beginning of the circle. So take that as a reference, I will, if you will. Okay. What if I want to do gradients? Sure. Let's do that too. And there's my gradients. Now, I'm gonna add something here. And I'm gonna go to my var, and there's my variable. Okay, so for gradients, I gotta have another variable. This variable G1 is going to C, which is this canvas 1 context 2D, and I'm gonna create a linear gradient. Create linear gradient, and then I'm gonna give it the coordinates 120, 50 to 25 to 50, 100. And now I go back over here, and G1, this is my G1. I'm gonna add colors to stop from, for blue and yellow. 0 is not blue. 0 is the beginning, and then it's from blue, and then 1 is 2, 1 in yellow. So it's 0, everything's between 0 and 1. And I'm gonna fill style of G1, and I'm gonna fill the rectangle. Here are the coordinates. Okay, so let's save it, and I'm gonna go to my Safari and reload it, and there's my gradient. There's my blue to yellow. 0 is the beginning, 1 is the end, from blue to yellow. And it's great. It's going to be changing over, right? You can see it's changing over. That's how you gradients. I'm going to leave this on the screen so you can see what I'm doing. And finally, another thing that I can do with Canvas is fancy text. I called it fancy text. So let's do that. Again, I'm going to C, which is the canvas get context. Here, okay, let's start with the font, 25 pixel Arial, right? And the field style is going to be red. I'm adding color. The field text, I put my name, Ray, and the size 2300 and the stroke, and I put change of header. Now, why is it two different things? Okay, you're gonna see when I put the word array, this here is actually one text line. This here is a different text line, except here I'm filling the text with color, and here I'm changing the stroke, which is the line around the word. This is how it's gonna look. And I'm gonna reload this page. See, that's the word array in red, fancy with the size, and I'm filling the text in red, adding the color. Ojeda, which is my last name, here it is in different coordinate, just ahead of, see the 300, but it's 20 and 70. And then, because it's the same distance from the top to the bottom and Y, but the X is different. And I'm changing the stroke. So you can see it's like a little double line in there. So that's what you can do in Canvas. Here's the example on the screen. You can do rectangles, circles, lines, of course, my names, and then I can do gradients. Really, really cool stuff. Anyway, so that is my example on Canvas. Now, figures and figure captions. Figures and figures captions. All right, so let's do this. Let's go and copy that. Go to my brackets and paste it. I'm gonna save it. Now, the figure and figure caption, they go hand in hand. Figure caption is exactly what it states. It puts a piece of text in the bottom of the picture. It's used to, give something a name, basically, right? So I take my name out of that, save it again. There's someone in there. I put it in the comments panel here, and I'm centering figure and figure caption example, the H3 header size. Now here's my figure right there, figure, and of course my element ends with the / figure, of course. Now inside of figure, I have my image. Here's my image with my sort of screen, the same picture I used before. See, there it is. In brackets, it'll show you where it is. My alternate text, my size and height, right? And then I can do fig caption, and then I put figure 1 screen picture. Very, very simple. Let's see, and I think I already said it, so there it is. I made the picture smaller because I gave it a width and a height, and this is figure 1 screen picture. Now, what this is doing basically is saying, look, this picture and this figure pic caption is part of this. It encapsulates it, if you will, puts it together. And I don't normally use it, but if you are going to use it, it's very easy. You can use the image by itself. Okay, you can use IMG source, but you can use this by itself. But by encapsulating that, you can put a caption to it. So it gets it a little bit, makes it a little nicer. Your choice of with or without figure, you can do it. Okay, so now let's do a picture example. I know there's so many ways. And a lot of people think that, oh yeah, you do just the picture thing or the image thing, and there we go. So now I'm gonna use picture. So this is a little bit different than image, and I'm gonna make this smaller. I'm gonna make this smaller like that. This is what it does, guys. Before I even save this, imagine you have multiple pictures of the same thing, either in different resolutions or different sizes, and you want to expand the size of the picture depending on the size of the browser. That's my best way to describe this. I'm doing something here in the beginning of my head, which is the viewport. I'm naming viewport, and the content is width equals to device minus width, and then initial scale to 1.0. If, without getting too fancy, this is defining the size of my screen and calculating width sizes and scaling everything to 1. Okay, don't worry about this too much, but if you want this to work, you need to have this done. Okay, I have basically 3 flowers, a big one, a medium size, and a small one. here's my big one. See, that's the size. I copied this from the internet. And there's my medium. See, it's a lot smaller. And there's the small picture, which is just a flower. The alternate text is garden, and then the width is automatic. So when I have everything inside picture, see, it's not picture source this. Picture is like figure. You got this whole thing with sources in the middle. Now I'm going to save it. And over here, I'm going to reload the page. Now notice how I planted the small flower. That's the small flower right there. But look what happens when I'm resizing my browser. Now I went to a little bit bigger, right? A little bit bigger. And if I keep resizing to the right, especially, now it's doing the whole garden. See how it changes depending on the size? That's how the picture works. You tell it the initial source, which is the IMG element, and the attributes are source, alternate, style. That style is a cascading style. You just do with auto. That will work. You don't need to mess with it. You can, when I get to the CSS, I'll display more attributes you can do on it. But for this, just see how it works. Look. So that is how you use picture. Pretty cool stuff. There's the text on the screen. I hope you can use this. This actually has more use than the other formats. Okay. All right. Now we get to the final part of the SVGs. SVGs are graphics, vector graphics, guys. They are complex, to say the least. Okay, so SVG examples. Again, I'm going to take my name out of this only because I don't want to hear, but I leave it in the comments. Obviously, you can put your own name. I'm going to center the word SVG example. I'm using the table only because I'm going to be adding to this. I'm going to be adding columns and rows. I'm going to do both. Now, the first thing that you can do with an SVG graphic is a circle. Now, unlike the canvas, in here, we're not defining or we're not encapsulating a block. See, in canvas, you make this space, and in it, within that space, you go and you add your graphics, but not in here. Here, SVG is doing something. Now I'm going to about that size right there, because so you can see it in one single line. A couple of things to notice here. First, you see this right here, that / and greater than. There's two ways of doing this, and this is for any HTML element. You can, if I do this like that, I have to do the / circle. You know, circle right there. Or I can just put the / there, and it's the same thing. So / and the greater than is the same as closing or putting the other tag, element, with the / It's the same thing. All right, and just save a little bit of space, if you will. All right, and my SVG, you give it a width and a height. In this case, it's 150 for, I'm making a square, basically. It's an empty square. There's nothing in it. Inside this square, I'm doing a circle. And the coordinates are 75, 75, which is the center of the square. The radius is 50. The stroke is red, and the stroke width is 3. And I'm making it a color cayenne. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to reload the page. And there it is. And I put the word circle, and then here's a break. This right there, right? That's this. Then here's my circle. Again, circle X coordinate, circle Y coordinate, my radius, stroke color, which I only put the word stroke, and then whatever color I want here. If I wanted this yellow, sure, no problem. Was I spell it correctly? Let me save it and reload it. And now it's yellow. See that yellow around, looks like a glow. And then the fill is cayenne, which is the center. If I wanted the center to be, let's say, blue, Put the word blue. Let's save it and reload it. And there it is with a little yellow. Now it looks like a little sun. Anyways, you know, obviously, I'm doing this on my local drive, but you know, the moment you upload this to the internet, that's how it's going to look. You know, that is exactly how it's going to look. All right. Now let's do a rectangle. So I'm going to copy paste here only because I've already done that. And there's my rectangle. Very fast. Let's see, run like that. Okay. So again, I'm doing this one was 100 150. The SVG width. This one I'm doing it 100 to 100. My rectangle width will be 75 and the height will be 80. And again, this is how I'm doing the style of the rectangle. The fill will be in RGB 128, 128, and 255. This right here is the same as doing a color, okay? Red, green, these are the RGB values. It's different than doing this, only in the sense that it's a different way of specifying a color in CSS. The stroke width is 3, and the color for the stroke is red. RGB, remember, red. So, all right. And I don't have a name for this 120, 120, 250. You'll see it right now. Only some, you know, they're easy. Some, you know, I could have done like dark red, you know, cayenne, this magenta, whatever. But so let's do this and reload the page, and there it is. There's my rectangle, and that's like a pinkish color around it, and then there's the color in the center. If I do this 150 and 150, which I think is what I really want to do. There it is. Now it's more centered. And my rectangle, it's there, right there, as soon as I go into the graphic. So that's how you do rectangles. Now let's do a rectangle with an opacity. And we'll do this with my X. I'm gonna paste it over here. And the only difference is this, fill opacity to 0.2, which is 20%, okay? That is 20%. Different, you know, see here, over here I put fill RGB 128, 128, 255. Here I'm just saying fill blue. See, a different way of, like over here, fill blue. And then the stroke width. So there's different ways of doing the same thing. So I'm gonna reload this page, and there's my rectangle. Notice how it's lighter than this one because I'm doing 20%, right? Instead of blue, let's do red. Because why not? Now it looks red. Now, it doesn't look red? Of course not, because I have an opacity of 0.2, which is 20%. All right. Really good. Now rectangle with rounded corners. And I'm gonna go here. And there's my rectangle with rounded corners. This one, okay, so I got my X and my Y. And then my radius for X and Y. And my width and my height. And then I got all the different colors and the opacity. I don't have to do the opacity, but I'm gonna leave it there. And I'm gonna reload the page. And that's what it looks like, right? That rectangle with rounded corners. And see, now it's rounded as opposed to a straight. Okay. How this is done is by doing the XY, RX, RY, which the RX and RY are the ones that define the radius of the corner. Think of like putting circles at the end. So I'm gonna leave this on the screen like that so you can see the code. All right. I'm using a table only because I wanted to, you know, show this and then show some in the bottom. So in my table, TR is for new row. So I'm adding another row. And in that other row, here's my first column, which will be an ellipse. An ellipse, the element or the attribute for the SVG ellipse is ellipse. Now I'm going to make this 150 and 150, and now it starts with CX and CY, the radius for X and Y, and then all of these over here, the fill yellow, the stroke is purple, and the width is 2. And look what it's going to look like. I'm going to reload the page. Of course, I gotta make this a little bit bigger now. And here's my ellipse. The stroke is different color than what the filling is, and the RX and RY are determining the radius from the ellipse, right? I remember an old math teacher used to tell me a circle is just perfect. You know, x squared plus y squared equals 1. If it's less than, it's a hyperbola. If it's more than, it's an ellipse, or the other way around, something like that. But anyways, that's how you make an ellipse. What if you want several ellipses on top of each other? All right, and this one, guys, I'm not gonna take credit. I actually copied this code from someone else, but I kind of liked it, the idea. I made this myself, but I like the idea of having several ellipses on top of each other. It's the same thing as this one before, except I'm making them, see, the X is the same, the Y is different, and then, you know, the RX is different as well, and then different colors, just so you can see that. So I'm gonna reload it, and here's my ellipses. See, 1, 2, and 3. So very fancy stuff. All right, what if now I'm gonna make a line. This is how you make a line in SVG. Line from x1, y1 to x2, y2, and then of course I'm giving it a stroke. I'm gonna make this 150 and 150 for the height and width of my SVG container. And I'm gonna save it, and then I'm gonna go to my browser and reload it, and boom, there's my line right there. Line right there. And finally, for this example, I'm gonna do a polygon. And so I'll do that right there. I'm gonna save it. I'll go over the parameters right now. So let's reload it. And there's a star. But how did I do the star? Well, let's go over this. I'll make it bigger so you can see it. All right, so it's obviously polygon, and then I have my points. You can notice that there's a comma in between X, Y, then there's space. That's space right there. Each space determines a new point. So XY, comma to XY, comma to XY, comma to XY. Each set of points will determine. Now, to do the star, guys, what I did, I went and I defined a my size of my container. I'm gonna make it 150. This one won't matter, won't make a difference. Basically the 55, 25, 95, 95, 25, all that. And then here's my filling is blue with the stroke, with the green stroke. The stroke is 4, and then the fill rule is even, odd. This here, if I move it over here, this 55 is this point right here. Then I went to 25, 95, which is this here. Then I went to 95, 25, which is that. See, they're all XY coordinates, and I'm doing this. Okay, so I'm gonna save it, and I just changed the container to 150. So there, it just moved the star to the left because obviously this square went to the right. So that's how that works. All right, I think I can do this one 150 and 150, and if I save it and I reload it, there we go. Pretty good. So that's my first example of SVG graphics: circles, rectangles with opacity, rounded corners, ellipses, multiple. This, not only you can do multiple ellipses, you can do multiple. I can put all of them in the same square. You know, work like a canvas, lines, and then this is just lines. Okay. I know a lot of stuff here. I'm gonna leave that all the way here. All right. It is time for a new example, and we're gonna do more SVGs. I got 3 SVG examples left because there's so many. So now, this is also a polyline, and look at all the different points that I got. This is a stair. It's gonna do this. Basically, gonna do that. And the rest, the style is don't put any color. The stroke is black, and the width is 3. Right? That's basically what it's gonna do. And let me take this title. I just leave it like that as the example. We'll save it, and when we load the page, boom. See how it does this right here? These are just random lines, just little random lines. That's all it's doing. I could keep adding lines to this, you know. If I from here, if I want to do let's say 90,90, and I'm gonna save it, and boom, just added that one line to the bottom. That's how you do a polyline. All right, let's do another example. I mean, add to this. Not doing another one, and just adding to it. And this also a polyline. Just different example, that's all. Boom, there it is, right there. Now, I'm gonna move this because I did it on the underneath on the second row, but I'm gonna do this right here. And all I'm doing, guys, is moving it from here. I'm gonna move it over here, okay? So in my brackets, I'm gonna save that, and over here, I'm gonna reload. Yeah, I'm gonna put it to the right. So there it is. The only difference here is this filling right here, in red. And the stroke is green, but you can barely tell. But there it is. All right. All right, now let's do some text. Another thing you can do here, gonna add text sample. This is my first text example, basic text. I'm gonna go to 10, 20 in blue, and I'm gonna type SVG rules because why not? And reload it, and there it is, SVG rules in blue color. Okay. Now let's do another example of text. You might be thinking like, well, that's no big deal. Anyone can do that. And probably, but now I'm gonna tell it, I'm gonna go to 10, 20. I'm gonna do the filling in red, and then I'm gonna put several lines. But now I'm using the word T-span. Now a span is a word that is used in, for example, Excel and spreadsheets. It says span over 3 columns, span over 5 columns. You know, you can, that's what that means, okay? Spanning means over more than one line. So I'm gonna save that. And when I go over here, several lines, first line, second line, see? Multiple lines of, I'm spanning. And I'm gonna add one more line. And here I'm doing transform. Now, in the transform I have not seen yet for you guys, or you haven't seen yet. It basically is saying, hey, go do something. The specific thing I want to rotate 30, 20 to 40, okay? Look what it's gonna do. Boom, I love SVG. It rotated in an angle, 30 degrees at 20, 40. That's what this is. 30 space 20, 40 is 30 degrees at 20, 40, and 30 degrees down, right? That is awesome, guys. All right. Now we're gonna go to the next line. Now we're gonna move to this line over here. So now I put this TR here. This one's a little different. Now I'm gonna do color lines. Here's my height, my width. There is no filling on this one. I'm using, now notice I'm now using the G here for graphic. So in the G, I'm doing different paths. The stroke red, and the parameters M520, L, this is the letter L, L215 and 0. Let me save this file, and then I'm gonna go here and reload the page. And this is the different color of lines, okay? Each one of the paths is defining a different stroke in the different color, red, black, or blue. And the height's gonna be the same, the width's gonna be the same for the SVG, but the G here is, you know, is encapsulating these three lines, and there's no color inside, no filling, right? Okay, so now let's go over the parameter, the attribute D. It defines the type of line, which is a single line, and then from where to where, and the width. That's what these are. But let's do different kinds of lines. That's the next example down. I'm gonna move this down like that. Now you're gonna see that the stroke is black. It's gonna be for all of them, but the width is gonna be different, and it's gonna be a different pattern. So let's reload the page and see now changing the different stroke. This example here, I'm changing different colors, but this example here in the right next to it is the different strokes. How about different types of lines? Sure, no problem. Let's go here. We'll add it. Now I'm using still the same G attribute. Fill none, stroke black. It's a 4-point stroke width. Now look at this attribute saying stroke dash erase. You got 5,5, 10,10, and this one's 20, 10, 5, 5, 5, 10. So what these are doing is different patterns, okay? These are patterns that can be replicated by the browser. So I'm gonna reload the page and see these are the different patterns of the line types. So we can change the different colors, the different stroke points, the strokes, and the different line types. That's how you do it. How about some drop shadows? All right, let's do the drop shadow now. We'll add this. So here's my height and my width. Now this time I'm using a 120 for both. Now I'm gonna be using something called definitions. Defs is something that is going to be used afterwards, where I'm defining. So I'm going to filter. The idea is this F1 from 0, you know, x equals 0, y 0, that 200% for both, for x and for width and height. The offset result is offset out. In is source graphic, 20 for both the x and the y. And remember, this backslash square then means the and that. Okay. Then I'm doing the blending, which is a source graphic, enough, out, and normal. I know this looks like Chinese, but once I'm done with my definitions, now I go my rectangle. Here's a regular rectangle of, you know, 90 by 90. And the stroke is green and a stroke width of 3. The filling is yellow and the filter, here's my filter. So we're gonna save this. And I'm going to reload the page, and that's what these are my two rectangles. This is a drop shadow right here. That's the drop shadow. All right, so let's do. I'm going to do this one more. I'm going to add another column. This is a second type of drop shadow. Again, I'm using my filters. Same filters, by the way, but this time I'm gonna do the URL #F2 filter. So there's a deviation going on in this one because I'm using the Gaussian Blur. So we'll save it, reload it. Notice how this is a little bit different than the first one. I'm doing what this effect is called the Gaussian Blur. And it's I don't use it that much myself, but it is pretty fancy. Gotta admit that it's kind of nice. All right, I'm going to add a third line here, TR. And basically, I'm gonna add a third drop shadow. There it is. I'm using an offset. I'm using a color matrix. Here's a color matrix. And if I'm gonna resize this just so you can see the code. Obviously, the code moves down and it still has the same effect, especially in HTML. But I'm using a color matrix. I'm using the Gaussian blur. I'm using a blend. I'm using filters, and that's all within the filter. The SVG has the definitions. Inside the definitions, I have the filters, and then here's my rectangle. And this time I'm using the effect 4. I'm gonna save this. I'm gonna reload the page, and that's what it looks like. See, it makes it a little darker. Now this looks like a true shadow. Unlike these other two, this actually looks like a real shadow, and it is angled to the right. See, there's a little angle, if you will. So that's what this does. Okay, all right. Let's do another example of vector graphics. And I'm going to go here. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger only so you can see the whole code in one line. Linear gradients. This time I'm using something called stop. That's the main thing here, but we tab that. So here we're going to change the title a little bit because I don't want my name on it. SVG graphic with H3 header, linear gradient. Here's the size of my SVG. And like that. Here's my definitions. Inside of my definition, I got linear gradient, and ID is grad1. It actually has an ID. I got the X1 and Y1 are 0%, and then I'm going to 100% for X, but 0% I'm saying on the Y. And here are my stops. My stops are offsets, the styles, and the opacity. And then, of course, everything is within the linear gradient. So let's save it and reload the page since we'll blank it out. And that's what this is an ellipse, by the way. Here's the ellipse right there from 100 to 70 to with a radius X and Y of 85 and 55. And I'm using the gradient 1, which is this right here. See this gradient 1? It goes right there. And it makes this beautiful ellipse going from yellow to red. Let's do a second type of gradient. So I'm going to go to the next square here. I'm going to move this so it looks a little bit more organized. It doesn't matter on the screen how you type it, but obviously if you're more organized, it's easier to find errors. So here I'm using again linear gradient, different stops, and so I'm going to save that. And when I go here and reload it, see now I'm going from the bottom yellow to top red. Over here I'm going from left yellow to right red. It's just a different type of linear gradient, that's all. All right, let's do a third linear gradient. And this one, all right, let's make this a little bit easier to read. My defs, my ellipses, and my SVG. Now this is text, and I'm typing in my first name. I'm using the family of fonts of Verdana. I'm giving it an XY coordinate, the size of the font, and I'm actually typing and filling in the text. This text is inside of my ellipses. So I'm gonna do a save, reload it, and there it is. I'm doing the gradient, kind of like the first one, but I'm actually typing a name inside. Now, and tell me that's not cool. Typing text inside an ellipsis. Really, really nice. Okay, I'm gonna add one more column. This time I'm using a radial, and I'm gonna move my SVG here and this one there. All right, I think I can do that. All right, so I'm using stops. It's very similar to the other radial gradient. I'm gonna save it, reload it, and look at that. Now it's going from, look in the center how it looks white, and it's gradient out into the blue, right? That's what this does. And using gradient one. See, they're all using the same attributes. It's just how you place them. You do all these different beautiful things. And I think the last one I have here is this here. That I just noticed this right here, 2 TRs. Don't need that one. There we go. I'm gonna put in my SVG there. There are my devs. There's my ellipsis. And of course, the ending tag of SVG. Actually, that. All right, something like that. So I'm using our radial gradient again. The only thing that are changing is the parameters inside. And I'm gonna save it and reload. Now, there's the difference right there. I'm telling it to do only a part of the ellipsis. Only a part, not the whole ellipsis, only a part of the, that's the angles I'm using, the Y's and the X's. So I'm only doing a percentage of it. Well, this concludes this particular tutorial. I hope you like it. It's a lot of code, a lot of CSS, not too much JavaScript, but there is a little bit of CSS, and obviously, but most of it's HTML. And the cool thing about this is it's all without any third-party software. It's all workable with free programs, whether it's Chrome, Edge, Safari, doesn't matter. So interesting stuff. I hope you like it. If you do, you know what to do.